Okay, good. All right, so let's continue with Nietzsche. This is the second part of Nietzsche. Now, I just realized I don't know where I put my book. Ah, there it is. Okay, good. All right. So let's review briefly what we talked about last time, and then go into today's uh, teaching. So remember, last time we had the issue, at least Nietzsche's issue with Christianity, and the way that Christianity for Nietzsche was a nihilistic religion because it despises the passions, right? And what did I say the passions were? What was the definition I gave the passions last time? Let's see if you remember.
An overwhelming emotion where we're passive.
Okay, very good. Overwhelming emotion. And where is this emotion coming from? What is the meaning of this emotion? What is causing this emotion according to the way I defined it, according to Nietzsche also?
It's like an opening up towards life. It's the way that life calls us to like out of ourselves.
Okay, very good, right? A passion is life, is coming, it's a calling from life, right? I think I mentioned that just to look at my notes again, right? Right. A passion is really is a feeling we get from life calling us into itself, right? We are called out of ourselves into life, into action, or into contemplation or whatever, but it's really a calling from life. So to negate the passions is really to block oneself out from life, and this is why Nietzsche says Christianity is nihilistic, because it's a way of denying life. It's a way of trying to avoid life. Right now, today we're going to talk about another way that Christianity tries to avoid life, according to Nietzsche, and this is the way that Christianity has created an alternative reality, which according to Christianity is much better than this life here and now, right? So, and this is where Nietzsche is the most, I think, angry. Because remember, Nietzsche was somebody who himself had to suffer a great deal, right? He had a lot of health problems. He was in a wheelchair most of his life. And so if he had been tempted to turn to Christianity, he would have been completely disappointed, and maybe he did and was disappointed, because Christianity basically says, well, it's okay, you're suffering now, because what really matters is the afterlife, and this is, whatever you're going through now, this is just a dream, this is just a test, this is nothing. What really matters is the afterlife, where you will be eternally happy, right? And for Nietzsche, this is a complete cop-out. This is complete escapist attitude. This is a refusal to look life in the face. It's a refusal to face life and the pain that it sometimes inflicts upon us, right? So this is a second issue, right? So make sure you write down that for Nietzsche now, the second problem with Christianity is not only its denial of life, right? But its attitude of escapism. It is the refusal of Christianity to face life and the pain that sometimes life inflicts upon us. It is really the stance of the coward for Nietzsche. We're going to talk about this, right? Okay, so so before we go into the actual text, right, where Christianity is, where Nietzsche is explaining this.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Could you just repeat that again? That last thing. Christianity isn't just about defining life, denying life.
Okay, so Nietzsche's criticism is not just that Christianity is denying life, right? Which is what we saw yesterday with the passions, right? Christianity is a refusal to enter life. It's also a refusal to face life, to face the dark side of life. We are constantly trying to avoid the painful situation by coming up with an alternative reality, which somehow makes everything better. And remember what I told you last time about Nietzsche's definition of happiness, right? Happiness is not to be comfortable. Happiness is to enter life and face all of its aspects, right? So Christianity, again, right, is withdrawing, is contracting itself, is refusing to see. This is the stance of the coward, right, according to Nietzsche. So before we get into Nietzsche, I want to point out a couple more people, a couple more thinkers around the time of Nietzsche who actually said the same thing. So I'm going to write them in the chat. You have, so let me make sure I write to everyone. So you have Sigmund Freud, right? is the first one we're going to look at, and then we're going to look at Karl Marx. Right, so both of these men, actually, they live around the time of Nietzsche, and they came up with the same diagnostic of Christianity, the same frustrating diagnostic. So let's start with Freud, whom you all know. There's a short book that he wrote called The Future of an Illusion. I'm writing it down in the chat. So if you want to take a look at it, you should. It's very short. It's maybe, what, 60, 70 pages. And in that book, he says something very interesting, which we'll find again also in Nietzsche. Remember that for Freud, no, forget it. Let me just go into the book itself. So in The Future of an Illusion, the argument is as follows. According to Freud, most of us in this life are miserable, right? If we really open our eyes to where we are and where we're going, it's a miserable situation, right? And so we are so miserable that we start to long for something better, right? We start to wish, if only, you know, there was some sense of security, if only we had, you know, a loving father who created us and who took care of us and who could carry us through this, if only this was true. And we wish it so strongly that it becomes a reality, right? This is what Freud says Christianity has done. Christianity is a mass wish fulfillment, is a mass delusion, where we're wishing so much to be safe and to have a God who protects us that we have invented it, right? Let me give you an example of how we do this all the time, right? Freud is saying this is a natural tendency of human nature. When you don't have something, you imagine it, and then you make it real. Let me give you an example. I think I gave you this example before. So suppose you have like a super crush on someone, and they don't even know your existence. But one day, out of the blue, they text you. Now, immediately, what are you going to think? Because you want this so bad. What are you going to start thinking? They texted you. What's the meaning of that text now for you? What do you think?
That they're like going to confess their undying love for you out of nowhere.
Very good, Cosmides. And Chase, how'd you get my number? Yes, that would be... that would be the healthy reaction. But if you're already intoxicated by your love for them, right? Very good, Sosa. Hallelujah, finally, right? If you have become intoxicated by your obsession for them, as soon as they give a little sign, you are now creating out of your desire a reality. You are projecting. This is what Freud calls the attitude of the way that we, or the attitude of projection. Whatever we desire, really, we project it into a reality because we just can't, it's too painful to live without it, right? So that's what he's saying. Christianity is a mass projection. We have projected a loving God. We have projected an afterlife because we are so miserable and we want these things so bad that we have invented them, right? This is, so make sure you write this down, right? For Freud, Christianity is a mass projection. It's coming out of the desire for certain things, the very powerful desire we have for love, for safety, for comfort. And we desire this so much that we have invented these realities, right, that Christianity talks about. A loving God who creates us, who comforts us, who gives us strength, who will save us, an afterlife, right? All of this are simply wishes that we have made into a reality. So this is a very difficult argument to circumvent, right? I mean, because it's such a natural human tendency that you do wonder, maybe we are doing this. Maybe religion is a mass projection because you see it in the way we do it in the daily life, right? We're doing this all day long, right? And so it comes to no surprise that collectively we could do this too. As a collectivity, we could also collectively project what we really want. So it's very difficult to get around this criticism. The only person, in my view, who really addresses it is Marcel, whom we're going to study next in a few weeks, right? So we're going to see how Marcel responds to Nietzsche and to Freud, obviously. Okay, so Marx has a similar argument. It's a little different. If you remember Marx, his main concern is to start a revolution. He wants to activate the working class so that they realize their condition of wretchedness and so that they rise up and they revolt, right? That's the goal of Marx, is to really activate the working class, awaken the working class to their suffering, so that they can then rebel, revolt, take up arms, create a revolution, and the world can be transformed. Right now, the problem is that the working class is also very religious. And so what is going to happen? Does anybody know the issue that happens now? Marx is trying to awaken the working class, but the working class is very religious. And so what becomes the problem? Does anybody know what becomes the problem what becomes the main obstacle to this awakening of the working class? And did it, Rivera? Yes, very good, right, Chase? Yeah, sarcasm indeed. Right, they're complacent in their suffering. So let me give you a quote, very famous quote. Yes, exactly, right? They will earn a spot in heaven. Marx is very frustrated with the working class because they're religious. Why? Because as religious people, they tell themselves, well, we're suffering now, but it's okay because in heaven we will be happy. So there's no need to worry. There's no need to rebel and revolt. Exactly, says Wozniak, it's the opium of the masses, right? So religion becomes a kind of drug whereby we become numb to our own suffering, right? And so the famous quote is what Wozniak is saying here: religion is the opium of the masses. Okay, what is opium? Does anybody know? What's the equivalent? Yes, it's a drug. What's the equivalent of opium today? We have a drug. Heroin. Okay, very good, right? So this is the same as heroin. This is a drug which just makes you feel so good, even though your life is in shambles. Here you are blissfully floating in an alternate reality, right? And this is exactly, according to Marx, what religion is doing to these people. They are living shattered lives, and yet here they are floating in this fake bliss of thinking, oh, it's gonna be okay, in the end all will be well, and God will give me my crown and my robe. And so this is the issue, right? So he's also struggling with the way that Christianity is creating alternative realities, right? Which in a way numb us to life itself. And again, right, each time Freud, Marx, they are both dealing with this issue of Christianity as veiling one's face to reality, avoiding facing reality in all of its aspects, right? Okay, so now we come to Nietzsche. So let's go to the text. We're going to see similar idea. I'm going to go to page 137. So if you have a different book, you go to the Antichrist, section 15. All right. Everybody's there? Say yes if you're there, page 137.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so let's read together. We're going to go into somewhat details into this text. So he begins, in Christianity, I'm going to start reading. In Christianity, he says, neither morality nor religion come into contact with reality at any point. Basically, he begins by saying, Christianity never comes into contact with reality. It's a complete hoax, according to Nietzsche. It's a complete invention. It's a complete projection. It's a mass collective delusion. And we're going to see why here, right? He talks about why we do this. But first, he's going to describe it. He's going to describe the delusionary mindset that he finds in Christianity. So then he has a list. He says, Christianity is nothing but imaginary causes, imaginary effects, imaginary natural science, imaginary psychology, and finally, imaginary teleology. Okay, let's look at each one of these. I'm going to write them down here. Imaginary. So first one, imaginary causes. Then we have imaginary effects. Then he has, oh my God, I got to write imaginary each time. Imaginary natural science. So we're going to look at each one of those. Imaginary psychology. And finally, imaginary teleology. Very good. All right, so let's take a look at the first one of these. Okay, so he's describing this mass delusion. He's saying everything in it is imaginary. And now he's going to analyze different aspects of Christianity and show how each one of these aspects is complete creation of the imagination. So let's begin with imaginary causes. So what does he mean by imaginary causes? What kind of imaginary causes, or what is this cause he's talking about that is imaginary in Christianity? What do you think?
Hmm.
All right, I see you, but I don't hear you. So yes, very good, right? God, for example, right? So Christianity, for example, is uncomfortable with this, with the idea that we don't know where we come from, right? We don't know how we got into this life, right? And so Christianity, because uncomfortable with this lack of origin, this ignorance of where we come from and where we're going, comes up with a first cause and names it God. Right? Says, oh, well, we don't know where we come from. Well, here's the answer. A loving God created us out of the dust of the earth. He molded us with his own hands and breathed life into us. And this is our destiny. We are the crowning of creation. We are the sons of God. Right? This is a big story, says Nietzsche. There is absolutely no proof of this. This is just a story we tell ourselves to feel better, that we have a cause, that there is meaning to our lives, that somebody wants us here, right? So make sure you write the first, one of the main imaginary causes is God, right? That we have a creator, that someone lovingly fashioned us. This is beautiful story, but there is no proof that it ever happened, and it's too good to be true, and therefore we are suspicious, says Nietzsche. Because it's such a great story, I wonder, says Nietzsche, if you didn't just create it in your fertile imagination out of your deepest desires, right? So let me say that again, right? For Nietzsche, the story is so good. I mean, it's amazing. Imagine a creator taking the dust, molding it, breathing into it, lovingly placing it in a garden. That's too good to be true, right? That would be great. That would be the ideal, right? And Nietzsche said, the story is so good, I wonder if it's true. It's too good to be true, he says. It's so good, it's probably a complete construction of your own imagination coming from the longing of your heart. You created this out of the longing of your heart. So that's the first one. All right, let's look at the second one. Imaginary effects, meaning these are imaginary transformations, right? So the Christianity says it is transformative, right? And Nietzsche is saying this is all imaginary. So give me an example of how Christianity says it's transformative and how this is in fact imaginary. Yes, Sosa, go ahead.
I would assume like to, be a good person simply, like, to do the right thing in life, to just do the right thing as, Christianity tells you to do, and you will live a good life pretty much. Do good things, you will live a good life, you'll go to heaven, when truthfully that's not exactly how life works. You could do good things, but you could still, live a shitty life pretty much, almost just like Job.
Okay, very good, right? So let me talk about this, and then we'll go to what Chase said with regards to forgiveness. But first of all, right, Christianity says, I can transform you into a good person, right? We can transform you into a good person. You can be a sinner, and now you're not sinning anymore. And the fact that you have changed so deeply shows that there's something powerful at work, right? Now, Nietzsche would say, well, no, the person just made a decision to change. People change all the time. They don't need a God to fix them, right? So Christianity says this is a supernatural transformation. You used to be a sinner. Now you're a righteous person. Look at the amazing transformation. Surely this could not have happened without, the Holy Spirit or divine help. And Nietzsche is like, no, the person just decided to change and worked on their personality and character, and here they are. Imaginary effect, right? Okay, likewise, right? A person says, I have been forgiven. I have sinned, but now my sin is washed away. And Nietzsche is like, no, it isn't. Your sin is still there. In fact, your sin is building karma right now, right? Nietzsche believed in karma. So you have the illusion that you have been forgiven, but actually, no, your sin is always with you. You did this, never gonna go away. This is in your imagination, in your wishful imagination, right? Okay, very good. So let's look at the third one. Imaginary, this one is easy. Imaginary beings. Let me see. Yes, absolutely, Cosme. This falls into too good to be true. That's the main issue of Christianity. It's too good to be true. And because it's so good, Nietzsche is like, well, I wonder if we didn't invent it because it's so good, right? It's really exactly what we want. How, right? So of course, right, Cosmides is telling us you'd imagine, right? Because that's the ideal. I would love for my sin to be washed away, right? Exactly, right? So this is indeed the good news of Christianity, that so many things can happen. And Nietzsche is like, nothing is happening, number one. And number two, you came up with this because it sounds so good, but it's probably just a construct of your imagination, right? Very good. Okay, good comments. Now, let's look at the point 3, imaginary beings. This one is easy. Did I put that in the chat, imaginary beings? I forgot, I'm adding them, right? Imaginary beings. Imaginary. 3, can't write beings. All right, so what are some imaginary beings that Christianity comes up with that are the product of our imagination, according to Nietzsche? Angels, yes, what else?
Demon.
Demons, yes, Satan, what else?
God.
Yes, God, the main one, right? God, Jesus, Satan, the angels, and so forth, right? So absolutely, right? So again, Nietzsche is saying, well, it would be great, right? If there was a big Satan that we can blame everything on, right? It would be great if there was a God who could save us from this evil, right? But again, we have no proof that any of this exists. And in fact, again, it's too good to be true. Therefore, probably you came up with this in your own head and then you projected it onto reality. So again, right, very good point. Very difficult to circumvent this kind of criticism. Then, imaginary natural science. Now this, you got to know a little bit more about science around the time of Nietzsche. I'm thinking more of Newtonian science or even biology at the time. And you can see some indications in the text, anthropocentric and so forth. What does he mean by this imaginary way we do science? In other words, how has Christianity influenced the way we do science? That's the main issue here. What do you think? How has Christianity influenced the way we do science? No, evolution, Christianity didn't come up with that. Remember, we're talking about Nietzsche, which is before, right? Yes, Chase, right? Absolutely. Christianity has influenced the way we do science because according to Christianity, human beings are the center of the universe, right? If you look at the story of creation in the Bible, you have everything is created and human beings are created last, and they're placed in this magnificent garden as though everything had been created for them. And so now we have a sense of our own superiority, right? We are superior to all the other animals. We are superior to the vegetable kingdom. And so we are in a way the most important. We are the center of the universe. And yes, Nietzsche says indeed that man is the same as an animal, but not the science of his time, right? So absolutely, Nietzsche is very Darwinian. Absolutely, Nietzsche is very close to Darwin, who will come up a little later, I think. But Christianity would never accept, right, that we are the product of evolution, or that we are at the same level as the apes, as, you know, the horses, as the donkeys, as the amoeba, right? No, we are superior. And so science for centuries has worked from this presupposition that we are different, we are above, we are more intelligent, we are superior, and everything else is there to be used by us, right? So, and again, Nietzsche is saying this is all imaginary, that we are superior, that we're the center of the universe, that we're not, that we're higher than the animals. This is all, where we get this idea? Who says, right? And so then later, of course, with Darwin, we're put back in our place in a way, right? We're thrown back into the animal kingdom, right? Very good. Now, next to last one, imaginary psychology. There's a lot of new psychological elements in Christianity. Give me some examples of how Christianity influences or has to do with psychology, with the health of the psyche. What do you see there in Christianity? I'm looking also. Any ideas how Christianity has influenced the way we talk about psychology? This one's a little harder because in the text itself it doesn't clarify too much, but I see here repentance, sting of conscience, temptation. So for example, feeling guilty, right? Nietzsche is like, this was created in our heads that certain things are wrong, certain things are right. And so we have manufactured guilt and shame into ourselves about certain things, or rather Christianity has manufactured guilt and shame about certain things, which was perfectly natural, right? And so I mean, you can think of several things that is considered a sin, and you feel, well, no, this feels natural. And so now you're guilty because you've been taught to be guilty, but actually maybe there's nothing wrong with this thing at all. Anybody have an example of, I don't know if I want to ask this question. But let me give you an example. For example, let's see, let's imagine. Yeah, exactly. Not the obvious one, but another one. So yes, there's that. But I wanted, okay, you could take that. Let's take maybe premarital sex, although, or you can take any sin, right? Well, I don't know, because Nietzsche himself wouldn't be telling us to go around killing people, right? But let's take perhaps, I'm hesitating. But we can take any, like in your bubbly, stealing for food. I'm hesitating. I'm too Kantian, I think. I'm too Kantian to be able to side with Nietzsche here. Feeding oneself or starving. I love your examples. I guess you could, I'll let you figure it out on, I'll let you figure it out on your own. There are several things that, I'm not gonna go there today, right? But there are several so-called sins that the church has come up with that Nietzsche would say, well, no, there's nothing to be worried about. This is natural, but now here we are. Yes, I know, Cosmidis. Here we are. I'm just not in the mood today. Not in the mood to talk about some of those things today. So yes, Ebony, you're also right? So we're guilty, and we're ashamed of it, but because it was manufactured in us by Christianity, right? There's several things we should relax about, according to Nietzsche, right? Very good. All right, moving on to the much less delicate territory of imaginary teleology. So teleology, coming from the Greek telos, which means what? Does anybody know? Cosmidis, you're our Greek. What is telos?
It is slipping my mind at the moment. I can't. The only thing that's come into mind is like telephone.
Not quite.
No, I know it's not that. I'm not.
Telos means go or end, okay? So teleology is everything that has to do with the end, and more specifically with the end of time, with the end of history, right? We were worried about the beginning of our life, and so we came up with the idea of a creator, but we're also worried about where we're headed as a humanity, as a planet, as a universe. Where are we going? Where is this going? And so Christianity has come up with all kinds of stories as to where we're headed, right? As a collectivity. We're headed to the last judgment, to the kingdom of God, to the end of the world, to the apocalypse. And these are all stories, says Nietzsche, right? Heaven or hell, absolutely, right? We are headed, we want to create these stories because it's too frightening to imagine just complete void, right? We're going nowhere. That would be just horrible. So we have come up with these marvelous stories that give meaning to our lives, that give direction and orientation to our universe, right? Okay, so you can see how, in a way, Christianity tells beautiful stories, but they're beautiful because we have invented them, right? Or purgatory, yes, Chase, that's less beautiful. It's beautiful for those who are trying not to sin, to know that those other people will go there. Absolutely, right? So Christianity has created all of these stories, right? in order to help us feel safe in the world. This is the bottom line, right? Make sure you write this down. According to Nietzsche, Christianity has just come up with all of these stories, all of these imaginary concepts, so that we can feel safe in an otherwise wretched, insecure, unstable world, right? So then he actually, following up on what I just said, right? Nietzsche actually gives a diagnosis why we do this, right? Why did we as a collectivity feel the need to do this? What's wrong with us, right? And he says this here. Go to the bottom of the text. Go to the bottom and let's see. Okay, the last two lines of 137. Do you see who alone has reason? Say yes if you can see it. Last two lines of 137.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now he's going to ask why we do this, right? So he says, who alone has reason to lie himself out of actuality? In other words, why do we come up with such lies in order to escape the actual or reality, right? Who has reason to lie themselves out of reality, right? And he says, he who suffers from it, right? In other words, it is because we are so wretched in this life. We are so pathetic. We are so cowardly and unable to enter life and embrace it that we come up with these fictions, right? So this is the work of the cowardly at heart, according to Nietzsche. Those who don't have the courage to enter life and embrace it, and in the pain and in the pleasure, they're so afraid to live like Job that they quickly create this magnificent alternative reality. And he says this, but to suffer from actuality, and now this is an insult, right, means to be an abortive actuality. In other words, those who suffer from actuality, those who are afraid to live, they're afraid to live because they are cowards, because they're aborted. They're not fully alive. They're like half alive, right? Aborted. They're already dead. And he says this, right? The preponderance. Let me skip that. Okay, so this is really the criticism, right? He says Christianity is really the creation of the weak. It's the creation of abortive realities. It's the creation of people who don't have the backbone and the guts and the courage to face life. And these weaklings are the ones who have come up with this mass delusion, right? Okay, so this is incredibly difficult to respond to. It took me, to be honest, once I started to read Nietzsche, Freud, and Marx, I was devastated for 10 years. I just couldn't find a way out. I couldn't find a way to, it's too good. It's too good. The argument is too perfect because it's based on human nature. And you see it in the daily things, the way you do this. So why not collectively? You see, it's a powerful argument based on human nature. How do we circumvent this, right? So anybody, let's do a little bit free for all right now. Can anybody find a way to respond to Nietzsche and in a way bring out, to respond to Nietzsche in a way as to show that religion is not a mass delusion? Can anyone do this right now? Has anybody thought about it? It's difficult. Let's see how many of you can come up with some ideas as to how you would disagree with Nietzsche, that religion is not a mass delusion, but you have to make a good argument. You can't say, I just feel, right? You have to say, you have to give a good argument as to how spirituality is not really like that. Okay, so let's see what's in my view. Is religion like any other passion or work of God? What do you mean, Chase? Tell us in your own voice. Can you speak?
So sort of like if you find somebody who is a pastor or like who reads the book of God and they're like, you know what, I want to grab a bunch of kids who are running wild on the street and give them somewhere to come and pray and talk. And like this creates a community where people are growing outside of their current circumstances. Then at that point, isn't it just as progressive as any other passion? You would kind of take a Dionysus and a Polyannonian, whatever, force and like harness.
So you're talking about religion as a force? Can you elaborate?
Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
So kind of like religion as a connector, or like a way to bring different people from different places into one spot.
Okay, interesting.
Like, let's say if you use it that way as like a conduit rather than the word or like the backbone of people, but if you just use it as like a tool, then at that point, is religion as bad as you would say it is?
Okay, good. So religion as a connector. So in other words, it's connecting us. So it's not, we're not escaping, we're being connected. And then, as you were saying, as a force for good. So together we can rise out of, for example, poverty. Together we can build community. We can build a haven for people to grow. So here religion can be seen as helping us to grow, right? Because creating a supportive community. Is that what you're saying, Chase?
Yeah, kind of.
I know.
Yeah, kind of. That's it though.
Okay, good. You guys could, let's write some of these ideas down. Let me write some of them down and then we'll get your other comments, right? So religion as a connector, and so connected, we're stronger. We can rise out of poverty, right? We can rise out together out of poverty and so forth, right? So in a way, religion makes us stronger, according to, instead of coming from weakness, right? But you would agree that it could still be a complete delusion, right? It's just we are connected around the story, but the story could be fake, right, Chase?
Oh yeah, I'm not saying disagree with Nietzsche. I actually like his whole argument. It's pretty solid. It's very well thought. And again, I'm not a very religious person. I didn't grow up that way, so it's just like you kind of see it from both angles.
Okay, so exactly, right? Religion is a kind of a storytelling that brings people together, and then together we can, okay, very good. That's one way to, and Nietzsche would agree, of course. Let's see, there's a bunch of you who respond. Can you guys just talk? Just raise your hands and talk. I can't keep up. So whoever wants to go next, just start talking or raise your hand. Let's see. Who is this?
Oh, it's Wozniak.
Okay, Wozniak, go ahead, speak.
I don't know. I don't disagree. That's the problem.
No, it's hard. It's hard.
But
Hard.
I think the way that he goes about it is wrong. I think that the way that he was talking about like power and like natural selection is going to be very easily co-opted by like fascistic tendencies. I think Hitler even cited Nietzsche as like someone that he was inspired by, so maybe he should kind of chill on that.
Yes,
I can't
that's
really say that either.
yeah.
Because
That's
if you think about it, the church has done some terrible things in the name of power and everything else. You can't say it's only fascist people.
right.
This
One
is true.
fascism against another. Good. What about? I see that Caratella had something to say. Caratella, would you like to tell all of us?
No, I was just thinking, like, I don't know if you ever heard of the Gulf of Alaska, where it's like two oceans, they don't connect, and the one side is different than the other. So that's like something the science can explain. So there has to be a higher power that's doing it, controlling it. So it's not all delusional and imaginary. That's what I'm.
Let's look at another, right? This idea that there are some things that science cannot explain. I'm typing it up for you guys. Right, so there is an element of mystery in life. I think we're headed towards Marcel when we talk like this, right? Because Marcel acknowledges that, yes, we should enter life, we should face reality, we're going to see this, but there's also a dimension of mystery in reality, which science cannot explain. And this might point to the realm that Christianity is talking about, right? So you can talk about the dimension of mystery, right, that exists in reality, which we are a part of, right? And this is what Marcel will be arguing, right? That he agrees with Nietzsche. We're going to see this in the next few weeks, right? Marcel agrees with Nietzsche that we have to enter reality. We can't escape it. But in the heart of reality, Marcel is going to find God or mystery or being. We're going to talk about these concepts, right, when we see him. So Nietzsche, in a way, has refocused our perspective on reality, but as we turn to reality, we see there are things that we cannot explain. There are mysterious things going on, that there's the mystery even of our being, right? And so these things might point to the dimension that Christianity is trying to talk about more or less. Right? Good. Rivera, go ahead. What do you have to say?
I just wanted to expand on the Gulf of Alaska
Yeah.
tie-in. So you know how, like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, science wasn't as progressed as it was today. So like I wrote that the truth is always changing. And just like, I guess in the psychological way, the reason why religion is so appealing is that it's like an anchor. Like it's unlike science where one truth may be a different truth tomorrow, religion, if it's static, like it's something that won't change on you.
Very good. So in that sense, it can be very healthy to have that, right?
Mhm.
So everything is changing and you might lose your mind, but if you have a strong religious belief, you can remain anchored no matter what happens, whatever is discovered, what you're going through. You haven't, remember, we saw this with Maimonides, right? He had a strong anchor in God. And he said, when this anchor is achieved, no matter what happens to you, you are in the higher level of consciousness. You are experiencing happiness because you are in direct contact with God, right? So in a way, Christianity can be at least useful. It's not true, but it's useful, right? So
Wasn't it Rumi said that with like the knowledge of the spirit and the knowledge of the mind or whatever?
wait, explain it. Can you see that
Was
again?
that Rumi who said that with the knowledge of the spirit?
Yeah,
And the
knowledge of the heart versus knowledge of the mind, right? So Rumi might respond to Nietzsche and say, well, it's true that the mind cannot understand, right, these things, but the heart can. So yeah, this is a good response. You guys are responding to Nietzsche from the different philosophers, right? Rumi would say, there's a knowledge, I'm typing it for you, right? Knowledge of the heart versus knowledge of the mind, right? And so what Nietzsche is saying, yeah, we have no proof for God, for the soul, for heaven, for earth, but the heart might know these things, right? Or might know of these things. Let's see. Ah, your dog is interested in Nietzsche. Very good. Any other, Sosa, I see you said something. You have something to add?
Yeah, so pretty much I just put in the chat, like, could we even say the same with like other religions? It's not just like Christianity is being the only one to create all this imaginative, like, stories and all that. Can we say the same with like other religions as well that
Yeah.
are doing almost the same pretty much?
Absolutely, right? Nietzsche is targeting Christianity because that's the only religion around, right? But now, today, we have everybody. So absolutely, all religions are kind of doing this, right? So you can really target beyond Christianity. Nietzsche is really targeting, you're right, Sosa, all of the religions, right? So we have to find a way to redeem them if we find them to be useful, right? How do we redeem these beliefs in the face of what Nietzsche said? That's the question, right? Wozniak, you had a response.
Doesn't he kind of just create like a horseshoe theory? Because in his own like words, he was rebuking Kant and like the categorical imperative, and basically saying like any type of imposed morals is BS basically, and that we should just believe what we want to believe. So that is just like religion and spirituality in another name. Just, so it's like, I don't know, it's kind of contradictory and self-fulfilling in some way.
Absolutely. Actually, when you read Nietzsche, he is a deeply spiritual person, right? He's not religious, but he's deeply spiritual. And he has, in a way, replaced Christianity with the Greek mysteries, right? Nietzsche is, in a way, deeply religious because he does go back and bring up themes like Dionysus. He talks about this God. He talks about the practices, right? So I don't think Nietzsche is getting rid of all religion. He's simply getting rid of a religion which for him is nihilistic and choosing another religion, which is that of Greek mysteries, which for him is life affirming, right? So if the religion is life affirming, I think Nietzsche would have less trouble with it, right? For example, the cult of Dionysus was a very life affirming, life celebrating religion, and Nietzsche really was leaning towards that, right? So let's see, can one is it too many? Spiritual is free versus religion. Yeah, absolutely, Arushabe, right? Nietzsche is looking for something more free, more life affirming. And for him, Christianity is particularly problematic. He might not find other religions to be as problematic as Christianity, because Christianity is not only seems to hate life, but is trying to escape life, right? So if you can find a spirituality which doesn't do that, Nietzsche would probably be happy with it. Any other comments before I introduce or conclude? Any other comments on this? Let's see. Raman, did you want to say your point to everybody? And also I saw Tyndale participated at some point. Tyndale, would you like to add to the discussion? Tyndale or Raman? I see you guys both.
You guys basically touched on it. It's just the realities, different realities I was talking about, and metaphysical world. Because he seems to focus on everything. He has to see everything happening, or it doesn't exist. But then you talked about the mystery, so that what I was talking about, different reality and a higher knowledge than your own that you cannot understand so easily.
Okay, very good. Absolutely, right? I think you as a class already started to bring up Rumi. I brought up Marcel. When they talk about the dimension of mystery or the knowledge of the heart, we are still in reality. We are not escaping reality, but within reality, there is these dimensions, right? Perez, you want to conclude?
I had a couple of questions, because I feel that Nietzsche isn't making proper distinctions here with religion and then science, for example, where I think he's putting them against each other when they shouldn't be. I mean, naturally they seem like they may be, but they're actually different in people's lives. For example, religion heads more towards, like, spirituality and getting closer to oneself or to God, where science is more of understanding the mechanisms of the world, and seeing how we can discover such things using certain like protocols and tools. For example, like the scientific method, right? And I would say, like, just to kind of like play devil's advocate, I would even say that, science is trying to understand God better in a way. I remember this argument was brought up to me before, where it was where science is trying to understand the world around us, but it doesn't really have any definite answers yet because it's continuously growing.
Good.
I wrote this in the chat earlier, where I think that to see exactly what I wrote, it doesn't make sense to me how he can go against religion itself, and say that it's creating different realities where everything we do in our lives are according to our own perspectives of things. We never truly have the same perspective. So it's like, no matter what we do in our lives, we'll never really be true to reality. We'll never really honestly see things the way they actually are. So for him to accuse Christianity of doing that, especially just because Christianity is creating stories that may not be true, but the point of the stories was to sort of present sort of wisdom, which wisdom is eternal. So it's not necessarily supposed to be connected to reality itself. Or at least it's supposed to be connected to the reality that exists eternally, which is wisdom, right? Like, wisdom is a part of that. No matter where you are in whatever timeline you are, the same wisdom is going to be applied no matter where you are. I don't know, it's weird, but.
Good. Excellent. Let me summarize a couple of your points for everybody, right? This was very rich comment, right? Number one, this was interesting. I think what Paris said, that the stories are not supposed to be talking about reality. They're wisdom, right? So whether it happened or not that Jesus walked on water, whether it happened or not that, water became wine, this is not the issue. It's the moral of the story, the teaching, the wisdom that is contained in the story is what matters. So in a way, yes, it's all made up, you could say, right? In response to Nietzsche, it's all made up because it's not the point to talk about reality. It's the point of these stories is to teach us wisdom. So let me write this down, right? So yes, they could be all made up, right? Because the point is not truth, but meaning. right? Does that make sense? It's not to tell us something about reality. It's about to tell us something about what it means to live, what it give us some wisdom. Another point that Paris brought up is the notion that science itself, right, is hitting upon mystery nowadays, especially when you're studying physics, right? Quantum physics. We are now, advanced physics actually also has some weird things going on where it feels very mysterious. It feels very metaphysical. It's not explained in rational terms. So science itself is constantly stumbling upon mystery, right? Which we were talking about. Raman, I see that you had a few points you wanted to add. Can you talk, Raman? Are you able to talk? Where is Raman?
Yeah, there was some side distractions. So, so in the chat earlier, I stated that Islam, for example, it is described to be religion of peace. Does that correlate with Christianity's religion of pity, as stated in a text according to Nietzsche? Because there were some connections I have thought of with other religions, just like how so was brought up earlier.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Although Nietzsche doesn't like the religion of pity for reasons that we don't have time anymore to go into, but yes, the notion that religion makes us better people, right? Even if it's not true, it still has a good use to it. This is another possible response to Nietzsche, right? Islam maybe is all stories, but it brings peace, inner peace. It can bring community peace, right? To go back to what Chase was saying. So in a way, even if it's not true, it's pragmatic, it's useful, and therefore we can continue to practice it, right? That's another possible response, which I'm going to put in the chat, right? Religion might not be true, but it's useful. Right? To create peace, to create compassion, to create certain virtues. It works, right? Okay, you guys are pretty good. That was a pretty good discussion. I'm surprised how good we were on the Zoom. So when we get into Levinas and Marcel, we're going to continue to respond to Nietzsche, to this problem, right? We're gonna, and I will actually, I don't know if I put test questions about it, but let me see, actually, I'm curious. What test question did I put for? Yeah, we have Marcel responding to Nietzsche in the question 2. And so we will be addressing this issue again, right? But this time from the perspective of Marcel in a week or so. So very good, excellent. That was a great discussion. It made me very happy. Any last comments? Just so you know, we are meeting again only, so we have a little break now. Happy Passover and Easter, everybody. We are coming back April 13, which is a Monday, right? Am I right? I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, right. We are going to be doing the introduction to Marcel. So you don't have a reading assignment to do yet, but I would suggest start reading Marcel. He's really difficult. You want to start, get a head start with Marcel. Okay, you guys can go. Whoever still wants to talk, has questions, or you can stay behind, and I'll talk with you. Bye, everybody. Happy spring break. Happy mini spring break.